find a nice shady spot for the car.
All right. Well, I maybe I'll stay in the shade, maybe it won't. Are we on air? We're on air. This, off the top of my head, you know what this reminds me of? How I forget how to say it in French. There was a whole movement that started in the late 1860s or 70s, plein air, or however the French would say it. You take your paints and your pedestals and whatever out into the real world. They would probably all die with virtual reality nowadays. But in the old days, you got out there and you saw what it really looked like and you painted it. Well, folks, we are in plein air because the library is not quite functioning totally yet. That's sticky too. So we're out in front of the library. Trucks going by. There's a blue without a back truck. No, whatever it is. So I hope y'all can hear me over the background noise. Regina's here today, and of course Melanie, who's running the Magic Box. I'm Mary Lou, and I'm just thinking about how we are 2 weeks behind time. So what I had, because of why? Oh, because the library had to shut down 2 weeks ago due to plumbing emergencies. So I've consolidated essentially 2 programs into one because I am determined not to get out of sync with Mother Nature, which is, if you look around, 3 weeks ahead of herself compared to the average. Here we are. My car thermometer said 78, and we're not even out of April yet. Well, you're sitting in the sun. Fortunately, I've sort of got for a little bit anyway. Let's see. Maybe the shade will go that way in the hour, I think. Okay, before we get started on the condensed program, I want to mention 2 events. Maybe Regina, you probably know about them. I don't know if you do, Melanie. One is a week from tomorrow, Saturday the 29th, up at my house at 4981 McAndrews Road. All you people with Google or whatever it is, it tells you where to go. Get a map. Next Saturday from 10 to 12, I'm having one of my woods walks for the wildflower garden. I started in my deciduous woods about 14 or so years ago. Now, once again, I never know when to program this because the weather is very variable, especially in spring. It always was, still is. So several of the wildflowers have come and gone already because things are so early this year. But there's others that will be blooming, and maybe even the ferns, who usually don't get started till May, I suspect will be out.
What time is it?
10 to 12 on Saturday the 29th. Okay. And those of you that are out there that still use pencil and paper, put it on your calendar. Then on Saturday, May 6th, is that what, 2 weeks roughly from now, I think? Down at Tinkertown Hardware Store in Alfred Station at 10:30 in the morning to around noon. I'm going to be doing a workshop on butterfly gardens. And I think Christian, our Master Gardener coordinator, I think he's going to be there with his computer, and we meet in the Fleming room of the hardware store. So if they have a blank wall, I'm not sure, we can see the butterflies and the flowers there on the screen. Otherwise, I'm going to have Christian print out some color images. And since we don't want to waste paper, guys, right? We love our trees. Let us know if you're going to come. I did a workshop there 2 weeks ago. And we didn't have to register. And so many people came, they were sitting on the stairs going up because we didn't have enough chairs. Remember? You came a little late, but you got a chair.
10 o'clock.
No, 10:30. 10:30. So you can call me 587-8437 between, say, 7 and 9 at night, because if it's nice, I'm out in the garden. And I go to bed early. As I used to tell my students, don't call me after 9. I'll call you back at 6 in the morning. They never called me after 9. All right. Or call Christian at the, oh dear, I don't know the number. Do you know the number?
Yes. one more.
Ah, Regina
Mhm.
knows the number. This is wonderful. What would I do? I'm gonna make Regina my right hand man. Wait, are they picking up?
They should be.
Okay.
I'm gonna start again. The number for property extension is 268-7641.
What extension do you?
585-26.
Okay, they may run through. It's the Master Gardeners. I think it's extension 14, but I'm not absolutely certain. I should write this
Have it tattooed.
like your astronomy tattoo. Okay.
At Tinkertown, also that day, they're having a bucket sale.
Oh, they are a
Yeah.
bucket sale. Oh, they put
Yeah,
all their
weekends.
stuff in a bucket and it's $5 or something a bucket. Oh,
Just
wow.
call.
Oh, whatever you can put in a bucket. Those are
Oh,
fun,
yeah,
I think. Hmm.
So that's a good two reasons to go.
2 reasons to go. Okay. Very briefly, any of you that garden realize April has been very, very, very dry. As a matter of fact, this whole end of the state was under a fire watch warning. If you planted your early crops like I did, your peas, your spinach, what else? Beets, carrots, radishes, those kind of things. And if your bed was raised, it was dry. My shoes got dusty just by hoeing up the top 2 inches of my raised beds. So I actually dragged out my hose and every night made like the suburban, with the hose, the guys after work, they love to do that. Normally I would say don't do that because you're not going to stand there for 4 hours, right? However, new seeds, their roots aren't very deep. So if you just have a few rows, you can stand there for 20 minutes or half hour and at least moisten the soil for the top 2 inches. So I did that all last week when it was so dry. We got about 3/8 of an inch rain on the hill out of Alfred the other night, a few nights ago. It's not really enough. I have a horrible feeling we might be in for another drought like last year. I don't know what have you heard the long term? Yeah, well, who knows?
Don't you have a ring?
I used to have a rain barrel, 2 of them, and then I gave them away because for me, they were too much trouble. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, years ago, I gave them away. Yeah. 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 I was actually saving water in the sink in a big bowl, all day long. I do simple things that it's not soap or it's whatever. And then I'd carry it out to my rock garden, which was really getting dry all last summer, and watering my rock garden in front of the house.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. All right, dry spells. Here comes another one of those Big Mac trucks.
Go like this.
A week ago, the tree swallows came back for 1 day. Then they went somewhere. I don't know where, but usually they're a sign they don't come back until they're flying bugs around. So I'm thinking, wow, going to be out there swatting bugs pretty soon. So, but however, next week we're getting a cold snap again. So that'll put the on the windshield. Flat, flat. Yeah. Yep. Well, you're not a bird person, but Regina is. Years ago, when I was driving west, I stopped in a little town in the middle of nowhere in Kansas on a 2-lane road, Route 54. Stopped for gas in the middle of the day, in the middle of nowhere, town of maybe 200 people, and a gas station, and all the silos. It was wheat country, I think, in that part of Kansas. Immediately, a little sparrow hopped down and started picking bugs off my radiator. Oh. And I'd never seen that before. And I said to the gas station guy, wow. He said, oh yeah, they learned to do that a few years ago. And now I just have 1 or 2 families that hang out here and they just pick the cars clean. Smart birds.
Yeah, birds are smart.
All right, even though we're sitting here in the sunshine and it's 78 degrees, starting, I think, Sunday night for the next 4 or 5 nights here in Allegheny County, chances are either in the village or up on the hilltops. It's probably gonna be down to 30, maybe even 28. So, my peas, by the way, are up. It took them 3 weeks almost to start peeking through the mulch. And what else is up? My spinach, they'll be fine. Yes, yes. Oh, no, the peas and the spinach, I just soaked. Did we do this last time? I'm losing track of what we. Well, I'm gonna talk about it when I get to my topic, if I ever get to my topic. I soaked them, but we'll talk about that. And then I planted them about 3 weeks ago. And so it varies on the temperature and how deep you plant and this and that. Maybe the variety. But they're all poking up now. I'm not worried about them. You can probably get to 26. And peas and spinach will be okay. I'm a little concerned about my lettuce and the broccoli, which I started early. And it's this high.
Oh, wow.
And I got seduced by that weather. And I put them out a week ago. So they've already undergone a cover them up at night deal. We'll talk about that later too. But if you have any broccoli out, crazy like me, or lettuce little plants, I suggest you listen to the weather report. And especially if it's going to be clear and no wind, that's when the frost happens. Yep. When it's windy, it stirs things up. If it's calm, cold air is denser and settles down. You could take a stake in your garden and tie on or whatever a thermometer at foot intervals from say 1 to 5 feet high. And on certain nights, I would almost guess, I've never done it scientifically, that the ground might be 30, but 3, 4 feet up, it'll be 33 or 4. Yeah. Okay. We'll have an extensive frost talk in September. So just listen to the weather report. And if you have some half-hardy things out there, maybe you want to toss a sheet or a box or whatever. Well, I have a couple of things. I had 11 broccolis, 11 a foot apart, so it was 11 feet. And what I had done is when I first put them out, because they were still a little fragile, and my hill is windy, I have some milk crates. So I put a milk crate over every other one, and that kind of even protected the exposed middle one from the wind, and a little bit from the sun, even though they had been hardened off. I'll talk about that whenever. Just briefly, you can't just start something indoors and then decide to pop it out in the garden. It'd be like me going to, when I lived in Kentucky in March, going down to Florida to do a craft show. I got so sunburnt. So that's the same thing. The plants will get windburnt and sunburnt. So you have to harden them off, maybe over a 5-day period. You put them out 1 hour, and then 2 hours, and then 4 hours. You know, and if it's really windy and sunny, try and find a spot maybe in the shade. Okay. So I had these crates. And the first night I hemmed and hawed because it's a nuisance. You get your old sheets out and then they get wet because it was going to snow that night or whatever, rain. And it was only supposed to go to 33. I'm out there with my thermometer looking through the window with my flashlight during the night. Oh no, it's getting colder than they said it was. And there was no wind. The wind died down. So it did drop to 30, but the broccoli was okay. But the next night was supposed to get colder. I got out my buckets, which I put over the ones that didn't have the crate on, and then some flannel sheets I have over the whole shebang. And it did drop down about 30 or 29, and it did snow about a ½ inch, which makes for insulation good. And they're fine so far. Now, if we have a crazy down to 20, okay. Remind me, did we talk about amending the soil? I think we did. We did. Okay, so I'm not going to go over that again. And did we talk about raising the beds? I think so too. All righty. But you have some wonderful, lots of images. You want to show those now? We're sitting out here in the sun. It's a little hard to
It's hard to
see. I said we should move over to that bench in the shade, and she says the Wi-Fi doesn't reach that far. Yeah.
I don't wanna risk.
Quint.
No. Yes, and Steve Jacoby.
Yeah, he did. Oh,
Wasn't it?
he had
no,
an article
not tilling.
in The Source on not tilling. And he got this great photo of this, I'm going to say Kansas wheat farm, you know, miles and miles, and this big tractor, and the big dust cloud blowing behind it.
Can't see
Well,
my
while she
mouse.
tries to get the Wi-Fi to work out here, oh wow, here we go. Now, how are we going to do this? How are we going to? She can't sit here because it's big, some big tar from the tree or the roof is sitting on the bench. Can you show the, without any great length of time, different raised beds?
I just.
Okay, she pulled that one up. And this is what most people do, right? Now I'm going to tell you, don't bother doing this. I am a raised garden advocate, but I don't believe in this kind of raised bed. You don't need to spend money on wood or cinder blocks or whatever. And truth be told, especially if it's just one in the middle of your lawn, the lawn is going to creep in. Weeds are going to creep in, and it's going to be really hard to keep it clean after the first year or two. Simply mound up your soil as if you buried the murder victim in your front yard, and now you have a mound of soil that's what would a grave be? 8 feet long and 2 feet wide, something like that. Okay, you don't need all the extra contraptions. All right. So then let's move on to the special crops that we should have planted recently. Of course, if you haven't done it yet, do it now. Okay. So did you find the peas? I did. Hold on, he's got to keep squinting here.
I keep losing my mouse. Oops.
All right, we're going to talk about 4. Oh, that's beautiful. Very good. That was the peas. And what was the other one you found? The spinach?
Here, let me show you.
Okay.
If I can find my mouse.
Okay, there were the peas. We saw them. You have to be alert, guys. You can't be running around the house vacuuming or getting coffee or whatever, letting the dog out. You got to sit and watch because it's here and then it's gone. Wonder what variety that is. Okay, we're going to talk about 4 things that should have been planted about 2 weeks ago. Oh, look at that. Gravel. How strange. What happened to it? It came and went. Alrighty. We're going to talk about peas and spinach. Those are always the first 2 things I plant. And radishes, which I don't eat, but my daughter plants in her little section of my garden. And they're the same early. And beets. Carrots. They're a week or 2 after. They're not quite as hardy. Nice looking spinach, and they mulch it with gravel. Wow. Oh well. Except for my prejudice. Except for my rock garden, I don't use gravel as a mulch in the vegetable garden. Because it doesn't stay in the path, and then it gets mixed in with your row soil, and then you've got gravel in your soil. Who needs that in a veggie garden? Okay. These 4 seeds, then, I will soak in room temperature water for 24 hours. But before I do that, I listen to the weather report. What's going to happen in 3 days? Because in 3 days, you need to plant them because they're probably going to start sprouting. And once they do that, that sprout is fragile. So you need to get it in the ground either just before it pokes out or just after, before it gets any length at all. So I listen to my weather report. Let's say I'm hoping to do it on Saturday. So let's see, Wednesday is 3 days. Wednesday to Thursday to Friday to Saturday. So Wednesday morning, soak them in enough water to keep them covered for the 24 hours. And if you're doing 2 or 3 varieties of your peas and your spinach, and you care about that sort of thing, label. Because you're going 3 days later, you're going to look at your 3 bowls of spinach and say, oh, which one was the Space and which was the Olympia and which was the Bloomsdale? And believe me, you're probably not going to remember. Right. Okay. Even when I was younger, couldn't remember. All right. And I'm fussy. I want to know what's what in my garden. And they're all different. You know, there's spinach, but the Bloomsdale is crinkly, which means if you don't have enough mulch for all, say, 3 rows, put it under the around the Bloomsdale, because it's much harder to get dirt from the rain splatter out of a crinkled green than a smooth, and the other 2 varieties tend to be smooth leaved. Well, I mulch them all with pine needles. Not much, but enough to keep them clean. Okay, where are we? All right. The second morning, so if you started Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, drain them off. And then for the next, all of Thursday to Friday morning, just keep them damp. That might mean you just have to stir them up a bit, because there's always a little water in the bottom. Stir them up a couple of times a day. Or if they actually dry out, just a little bit of water to keep them damp. All righty. Then with the peas, who knows what a legume is? Gina knows. What part of air? What's most of our air made of? The 80% of the air we breathe is nitrogen, N2. The plants need a form of nitrogen called usually nitrates, I think, which is a combination with oxygen. Legumes have the ability, because of certain bacteria that live in their roots, to take the nitrogen from the air and convert it into free fertilizer. Okay. So anyway, let me just think for a minute. Who is that? Oh, they're way down the street. Oh, okay. We'll have to. I'm not used to music in the background, you see, so I get distracted, even though we're a block away. Yeah, I get used to the cars going by, but somehow. All right. Okay, that's another way of doing it, I guess. No, I've always, for, I don't know, 40 years or more, have done this soap and water deal. Well, I never bought paper towels, so that's probably why. Okay. Once again, that's another thing you have to buy that you don't have to buy. Okay. Now, if you have a new garden plot, it may not have a lot of these nitrogen fixing bacteria present in the soil. So years ago, I bought a little package, and it's like a black powder, which is mostly filled, because bacteria, you know, are so tiny, you can't even see them. And it's good for both beans, green beans, dry beans, lima beans, and peas. So no, day 3, that Saturday morning, the peas are just damp. Or later on the beans in another month. I just sprinkle a tiny, tiny bit and then mix it up, and this black dust winds up. And like maybe if you have a half a cup of peas, damp seeds, not even a quarter of a teaspoon of, it's very expensive, and you don't need much, you know? So now mine is so old. Chances are the bacteria have died. I keep it in the fridge. I bought it from years ago from a nursery. I forget where. Probably through the mail, through one of the seed catalogs that I used to deal with. It gets started. Yep. What would be the example? It's like sending the kids off to summer camp with a lunchbox with all their favorite stuff in. So they'll be happy. Right. Okay. Now, you know it succeeds, and you could try an experiment. Do part of your row without and part with. when you pull your vines up when they die in July, the root system will be covered with teeny tiny little nodules, the size of a teeny tiny pea or your beet seed. And that's their house. And that's where they live, on the roots, in contact with the soil.
Absolutely.
Now, for years or forever, I just, when the vines were done, I'd pull them up and throw them on the compost heap. Suddenly, I thought 2 years ago, even though it's a lot more time, what if I just cut them off at the ground, leave the roots with all the nodules, with all the bacteria right there in my garden soil? And I really, scientifically, I don't know. Do they die off over the winter? I don't know.
Right.
Do they die off when the plant's not on top of them, growing? I don't know. But anyway, unless I'm pressed for time, that's what I do these days. As well, they would not be as productive. Now I'm thinking legumes. We think of peas and beans, but also alfalfa, I believe, is a legume, and locust trees are legumes. So if you have poor soil, or if you have a hay crop and your soil is not, very nutritious, I think mixing the alfalfa in with the other hay grasses helps. Or the white clover that they always sold in the grass seeds. The reason the white clover was put in with your grass seeds is that it provided nitrogen in the soil, and the grass loves nitrogen. All right, what am I doing? Okay, back to our, now we're going to talk about those 4 crops and how to plant them. I had an interesting experience, I won't say with who, somebody who's new at gardening, and they were planting the peas at the same time I was. And I said, well, peas need about 2 inches apart. Plant them pretty closely. But the method I have used for decades is that you don't plant one row, because peas do find crowded. So you make a trench with your hoe. This is assuming, what did you do last October? That your garden is ready to go. You don't have to dig up your lawn or dig up your garden or whatever at this time of year when it's usually too wet to work. So in your well-prepared soil and your slightly raised bed in the garden, you take your hoe, which is usually 4 to 6 inches wide, and you make a trench down the middle of where you're going to plant them. If you just do a single row kind of thing rather than beds, 2 feet is fine, because the peas, when they grow up in that 6-inch trench, will spread out, and you need the 2 feet for the peas, or 1.5 if they're staked with brush or trellis or whatever. So you make that trench 2 inches deep, and then this newbie was out there. She didn't have a measuring tape, but she was carefully putting. Now, the row was 20 feet long, and at 2 inches, that's 6 times 2, that's 180 pea seeds. And then if you do it twice, that's what, 360? How long is it going to take that person?
A long
time. No, with the peas, it's about is a great word. They're about 2 inches apart. So you take a handful of these damp, blackened seeds. Probably want to wash your hands. I don't think the bacteria will kill you, but you should wash your hands when you're done.
So they sprouted.
They're just beginning on the 3rd day. And ideally, it's going to rain in the afternoon. If we could make the weather do it. And you just toss them in the trench. And they more or less tumble, more or less. Yeah, some are going to be close and some aren't.
Yeah.
But eventually their root systems will work it out, and they'll all grow happily together. Yeah.
And then
Well, yeah, true, but you do need even the ones that say they only some pea varieties, like I think Little Marble, it's a 50-day pea, and it is only about 18 inches high. Probably, and they help hold each other up like that. But then if you have a really good wind, like I do on my hill, they're all gonna blow over together. So yeah, But some peas go 5 feet high or 6 feet high. So especially anything above 2 feet, I think you should stake one way or another. Now, Regina, what would be one way you could stake them? Would you say? These poor people. I just pop these questions. They have no clue that they're coming.
Somebody told me that this.
Okay, that's what I do. I told you that. I have 10 acres of woods, and I'm always pruning brush and whatnot. So yeah, I use brush. I think the old farmers in the old days used to call them pea sticks. Okay, but what else could you use if you don't have a woodlot to find brush in? You can buy trellises. You can also put a few stakes, I'd say every 5 feet, and then do some string.
yeah.
Yeah, sort of like, or they're fancy trellises you can buy if you have the money or want to do that. Okay. Now, for me, the wind usually comes from the west or the southwest. My rows run north and south. So I put the brush on the east side. So the wind tends to blow the vines into the brush
Right.
and they hold each other up. Okay. What else about peas? Let me think. So, yeah, but milk crates are only a foot or so high, so and that would be a nuisance at the end of the season to get them
Oh, yeah.
out of the milk crates.
Okay.
Yeah. And a nuisance if you buy trellises or netting. Okay. Let me think about peas before. Okay. Some varieties 50 days. Some varieties 70 days. Peas taste best in the old days when they ripened in June and the temperature was in the 60s and low 70s. That doesn't happen anymore. So it's hard to get, if you're a real gourmet and really notice your tongue is trained, you will notice the difference if it's 80 degrees out and the peas are ripening. Anyway, whenever they, depending on what you want, if you want to just plant them in early April, have them start making peas middle of June and be done by the 4th of July, go for the 60 days and shorter varieties. No, you can start them now. As a matter of fact, I have some peas. I should have brought those pea seeds down. I could give you some pea seeds that I saved, which we'll get to in a minute. Then when they bloom, it's 2 weeks before the pods start coming. So you have an idea that unless something crazy happens with the weather, it's 2 weeks after the first bloom. And then you really do have to pick probably every 2 days. And my suggestion is if you are a home gardener, you're growing for quality, not quantity, like the commercial.
Sure.
And so when the pods are half filled or 2/3 filled, that's when you pick them, take them in, shell them, pop them in your pot with just a little bit of water. Only bring them to a boil and simmer for 3 to 4 minutes. You know, we don't want green mush, canned peas. I grew up on canned peas. Oh my God, so wonder I ever got to eat peas. So bright and green and wonderful tasting. All I do is put a little butter on them, a little salt. I don't, and we're going to do recipes. That's my recipe for peas. You don't do anything with peas. I don't eat pepper, but yeah, you can put pepper if you want. Or you can do whatever you want, but yeah, I know. Now, for years when I froze peas, and another person that I was helping out was freezing and veggies last year, wanted to know, well, why do I have to cook them? Can't I just pop them in the freezer? And I said, no, because then they won't keep as long. By blanching for 1 minute for peas and maybe 2 minutes for green beans, you kill the enzymes that will cause deterioration in your freezer. So what I used to do was big pot, boiling water, plunk them in a colander, I think, for a minute. And then you're supposed to plunge them into cold water or icy water and chill them down as quick as you can. Then I used to dump them as is, drained, into my cartons and freeze them.
Mhm.
A month or two or 3 or 4 later, when I wanted just a few peas, you had to thaw, the whole shebang.
Oh, yeah.
Or I don't know what made me think of it. Oh, I know. Blueberries. For years, I would take my blueberries on not a cookie sheet. I said, well, I had a sponge cake pan, which had one each side, and I would put my blueberries on that, freeze them, and then pour them into the cartons. They'd rattle around like frozen marbles. Then you could shake out as many as you want. And I suddenly thought, why can't I do that with peas?
Oh, right.
Duh, or anything.
Mhm.
So now my peas, my asparagus, peas, that's how I do it. I blanch them. I do dry them a bit with a towel, and shake the towel onto the pan, stick it in the top of the freezer for about 2 hours. They're little hard green marbles. Rattle them into my carton, and there they are, ready to shake out. Oh, there go the little kids with their. Can people see them? They can't see them, can they? This is our Montessori school kids going for a walk, holding on to the colorful rope. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids and 2 babies. I wonder if they'll remember that as they get older. Mhm. Oh, peas, yeah. Because they're not productive. You notice when we talked about 100 square feet being, I didn't include peas because they take a lot of space and a lot of work shelling to get what you
Okay.
eat, which is why a lot of people now have gone to the snap peas and the sugar peas and the snow peas
Oh.
because you eat the whole thing. You don't have to take time shelling. So I think that's why. Um, on the way to Buffalo, this side of, yeah, before you turn left, before you get to Houghton, there used to be a processing plant.
Hmm.
You're right. I haven't thought of that in years. No. Well, we're lazy. We want it with no effort. Okay. What else about peas? So usually if you pick them every 2 or 3 days, depending on how fast they're maturing, you can get at least 5 or 6 pickings. Well, if you grow the taller vine like alderman, which is like 6 feet or more tall, they'll go through July, and you just keep. It's like tomatoes that are indeterminate; they just keep growing. But I always grow the shorter ones, so they're done by the 4th of July usually. And then I just either pull off the vine or cut them off. And guess what? Even though, oh, by the way, guess what? When I semi-dug a few inches a row to plant my new asparagus bed, 3 perfect potatoes popped up.
Oh.
They froze in the winter. This happened last year. I was determined last fall I was going to get every potato. You always miss a few. And I brought them in, I peeled them, and I fried them up. They were fine. I can't believe it. They froze in the ground over winter, but they were still edible.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I am. So where was I going with that? Oh, your peas. No matter how, now you have this trench is going to produce probably this wide. And they're green, just like the leaves. And even though you really try and get every single pea pod when it's just right, you're going to miss some. And as you pull these vines up, you're going to find fat. They sort of a yellowy green, and they're rough skinned, not smooth and green anymore. They're old peas. You really, unless you're starving, you don't want to eat them. But you can save them, which I do every year, to grow my own. I don't have to buy pea seeds anymore. And so certain things self-pollinate, even hybrids tend to breed true. Peas and beans. And of course, they're easy because they're big. So I save my like my black turtle dry beans and my Mexican red dry beans and sometimes my green beans. So I don't have to buy them every year. So you want to, so how do you, pick them, shell them. And what I do is I want to make sure they're dry. There's
Mhm.
nothing like moldy peas that you
Mhm.
ruin in a jar over the
Mhm.
winter. So once again, live and learn. For years, I would put them on a tray, put them in the oven on low, just a pilot light, turn it off, let them sit for 2 or 3 hours. Do this for 2 days or whatever. You've heard about usually a guy leaves a kid in the car, the windows up, or the dog. The kid and the dog are dead. And I suddenly thought, why should I waste my propane? I'll just spread them out on trays in my car, sit the car in the sun and shut the windows. Now I don't go driving around with them because we just my luck to have to come to a quick stop. There goes the locomotor guy. So anyway, a day or two in the sun in the car, which I guess too hot, truthfully. Sure, the car can get to be 150 on certain days in the sun. So maybe crack your window. So after that, that works. And then they're nice and dry, and I keep them in jars in my kitchen, in that one shelf I have against the wall. Now I suppose I should probably keep them in the back room that stays colder, but this works for me, for my peas and my beans. Yeah, well, I grew up poor. You know, you don't have to live in a throwaway society, even if it's a throwaway society, right? Yep. Alrighty. And then the last thing on peas would be, Rima and I were going to try an experiment, but then last year was so dry, it didn't work. When we get to beans in about maybe next time or the time after, with my green beans, I wondered when, oh, this is too long a story. We don't have, what time is it?
12:09.
Very quickly. Years ago, I had to be away for a workshop in May, and I'd already put my pumpkins out. It was supposed to be fine, and then I listened to the weather report up there, wherever we were, a couple hundred miles away, for an overnight, and the weather was going to go down to 25 here. I thought, oh my God, there go my pumpkins and my squash, even though I only grew one of each. Sure enough, came home Sunday night, dead as a doornail. You know how things look, pumpkins or squash. And they were, they were this high. They'd been out for what, probably 3 weeks. Oh, they were dead. For some reason, I looked at it and I thought, I wonder if he'll come again from the roots. So I cut it off at ground level. And a week later, popped new leaves. Now, I don't know if that will always happen. It happened with my pie pumpkin. Years later, it is now July, middle of July, my green beans are done. And I thought, what if I cut them down an inch to the ground? Will they come again? And that would give me a jump start on having a second crop before the frost in late September. So I did, and they did. And I had a second batch of beans in September. So probably the first week in July, around the 10th of July, when I sow them out in the middle of May. And it's usually 60 days before you get green beans. So middle of May, June. Well, usually they start making green beans, the quicker ones, by the 4th of July. So probably then it was the middle of July. Now you see, yep, it took, once again, 2 weeks of harvesting the beans. Cut them down an inch to the ground. Maybe I left 1 or 2 little leaf stems at the bottom. This knocked off 2 weeks of the growing season because it already had its root system. Well, yes, but new seeds.
Yeah.
And they started making beans the first week in September.
Oh.
And so I had 3 weeks, I think, before, which was just enough to harvest them all before the first killing frost. Now, where was I going with that? Oh, so last year, Rima and I she was growing some peas that I had extra seeds and gave to her. And we were laughing how we wondered if they were reverting because these were Green Arrow was supposed to be this high. For some reason, mine and Rima's kept growing. I had to keep adding higher stakes and more string. So I don't know what happened to my seeds. Maybe they have reverted to an answer, but the peas were still very good, you know. So I thought, I wonder if in the beginning of July, if I did that with my peas, if they would do the same thing. So we both tried it, but the drought last year, I think, screwed things up, so it didn't work.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna try it again this year because wouldn't that be nice to have a second crop of peas in the fall? Let me see, page 3, spinach. A lot of people, I don't know why, well, I do know why. Spinach is an acquired taste, I think. Do you like spinach?
I love spinach.
You love it. What about you? You love it too, okay.
You don't like spinach?
I didn't, because once again, I grew up with canned,
Yeah.
which was a double whammy.
Mushy.
Well,
No, I
not
still
only
like
that,
it.
the can contaminated the spinach because there's something in spinach, I don't know what, that you're not supposed to cook it in an aluminum or cast iron pan. You're supposed to use enamel or glass or stainless steel. Now, I do break that rule, but I'm going to jump ahead to my grandmother's spinach recipe, which you all might want to try. If you feel you should eat spinach because of the vitamins, or as my Uncle Frank used to say to my cousin, you want hair on your chest when you grow up, you got to eat your spinach. Now, why my cousin was a girl? Who wanted that? I don't know. Onions? I think it had that, who was that cartoon character who ate
Popeye.
spinach? Popeye ate
And
spinach
olive oil.
and olive oil. Okay. Okay, here's my grandmother's, and I break the rule, which sometimes I do. And I cook it in my cast iron pan. But if you don't like that, what is it? Not tart.
It's not bitter.
It's not bitter, but it makes your tongue respond in a way that's different than other things. If you don't like that, try the following. Use either a copper bottomed or heavy duty stainless steel pot or cast iron pot like I do pan. And let's see, I'm going to do it for a while because I cook for a lot these days. Tablespoon of butter, a scant, melt it. Take, depending on how much onion you like, maybe a small onion or half of a big one, dice it up really fine, saute it for about 5 to 10 minutes in the butter. You might want to splurge and use 2 tablespoons of butter. Then 1 rounded tablespoon of flour. Turn your fire off. This is the trick to make a smooth cream sauce. Turn the fire off and stir in your flour until it's smooth. Then, I usually do this with my frozen spinach in the winter. So the frozen carton is thawed and it has enough water, spinach water or whatever it is in it. And I dump it into the pan, stir it around to mix it in with the smooth flour and butter and onions, and then turn on the fire. Just bring it to a bubble for about 2 minutes. And there's something about, especially if they're sweet onions or the flour, that it mellows out. And it makes it like a cream spinach, but it doesn't have that, whatever that is that makes your tongue feel funny, if it's just fresh spinach. So you might want to try that recipe. But to get back to how to grow it, after peas, spinach is about the ground temperature should be 40 to 45. And that's when the worms start moving around, and that's when the robins come back. And so that's when you see the robins out there catching worms, it's time to plant your peas and your spinach. If you have good deep garden soil, you only need a row 8 inches wide. Or if you have 2 feet, you could do 3 rows, 8, 16, 24 inches. Take your hoe, and all you need is a 1/2 inch deep, little trench. And then you take your seeds and put them down. You do have to be fussy. 3 or 4 inches apart. down the road. By the way, the spinach you've soaked like the others, but you didn't put any bacteria
Oh.
on it. So, alrighty. Then you carefully cover them up, gently press them down. This year I had enough pine needles saved from the library
Mhm.
raking that I could just put a 1/2 inch, just a band, so that when they come up, they'll be bud free, hopefully. Yes. Yep, you can grow them in a big pot.
Mm.
Then what you do is, spinach is one of these, within 40 days, that's 6 weeks, you can harvest. I pull up every other one because you want them 8 inches apart. And you planted them, say, 4 inches apart. So
Okay.
every other one comes up, the bottom half gets clipped off and goes in the compost heap, the roots. The rest, within a week or so, you can harvest 2 ways. Quick way, take the scissors, cut them off an inch above the ground, and you harvest the whole thing. It will come back probably within the week, depending on the weather. And you can probably harvest at least 2, maybe 3 more harvests
Oh.
on that row. Or you just, with your fingers, clip off, just say the 4 largest outside leaves,
Mhm.
all the way down the row, however long you have to go to get a meal. And then the plant just keeps growing.
Mhm.
Now, spinach is notorious for bolting. You know what that means?
Mhm.
Okay, what's that mean?
It's when it sounds like it's seed.
Flowers!
Wow.
We're not eating spinach flowers. They might be edible, I don't know. But we're not interested in saving the seed or eating the flowers. It's getting too hot. When we melt down here, I don't know what it is. Also, the leaves start getting pointy shaped. So regardless of the shape of the leaf, they start getting pointy shaped and they start sending up a flower stalk in the middle. And that usually happens when the days get longer in June, towards the summer solstice on the 21st, and the days get hotter. Now they've been breeding and breeding to try and get rid of bolting, and they've done quite a good job, but not perfect. Are we running out of time? Almost. Hurry up. Alrighty. So eat your spinach while the weather's still cool.
But when you see it as flowers or the point of these, it's still.
But no, it doesn't taste as good. No, unless you're starving. Mm-hmm. The seeds. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Do we have time really quickly?
Yes.
You're good. Okay. Now I decided radishes are such a short-term crop that we don't need to have a row of radishes. So here's what I thought, and this is the first time this year. There are certain spots in the garden that are going to sit empty till you put out your tomatoes or your pumpkins
Mhm.
or your peppers, right? So I'm going to use an example of a tomato. My tomatoes, if I have a space 2 feet by 2 feet and I stake it, that's enough room for my tomato. And they don't get set out till usually the 2nd or 3rd week in May. Radishes can go out the 1st week in April, and you can start eating them after 30 days and be done eating them easily within 60 days, or they're going to get woody and tasteless, right? Okay, so I don't eat them either, but my daughter loves them. So let's look at a square. We're going to do 2 square feet. How many radishes can you grow in 2 square? Well, in a square. Okay. And you would get an F from your teacher because you didn't do the math.
500.
Okay, let's close. 1 square foot, 12 by 12. If you plant them 2 inches apart, that's 6 by 6. 36 radishes in a square foot times 4. 120, 144, I think. 144. Now that's like you, more than the radishes that I want to eat. Way too many radishes. But if you like radishes or you have a big family, you can do that. So, and you might want to plant them an inch apart, because once again, after probably 25 days, depending on the weather and the variety, you'll get an inch size radish. You pull up every other one around your square, and you leave the rest to get a little bit bigger. Now, I just learned something this year. forget where I read it, one of those garden magazines. I didn't know this. There are two kinds of radishes. We all think of the round ones, don't we? They should be grown in the spring. Oh, there's a robin. Oh, it must be 40 degrees and down there because you're looking for for worms. That's a thin robin. Yeah. Okay. But there's another type of radishes that's more like a carrot shape, cylindrical.
Oh.
And they grow best in the fall.
What color?
Well, mostly red, but I think there might be a sort of a creamy colored one. You know, it's like, what's that? I can never remember.
Oh.
It's not kale. It's not chard. Swiss chard. Used to be green, and now they have rainbow, yellow, red, whatever. So I think they're beginning to do that with beets now, because you can get yellow beets and pink beets and white beets, I think. Okay, I got to move on. Get red all over your shirt, right? Okay. So use the radishes as a filler, and then you, because they don't keep, you know, you really have to pick them and eat them. Then, you know, 2 weeks after the first planting, if you're going to eat however many radishes in 2 weeks, then 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, another section, you plant another bunch. And as the first bunch goes down the hatch, it's all gone, then the next bunch will be ready to harvest.
What kind of recipes?
Except for the fancy making roses for fancy salads.
Yeah.
I don't eat radishes. So
Oh,
what about you? I
There's-
don't.
Like,
I- Side,
I
right.
don't.
Yeah, I
I
know.
don't eat recipes.
Well,
I'm used to that radishes, so I just eat it fried. Yeah.
we do not suggest that you do this, whatever your age. By the way, you know what radishes used to be used for? Carrots take forever to come up. And when they do come up, they're real teeny tiny. So people would sow a few radishes in the carrot row because they would come up, break the soil, and mark the row.
Oh.
I hadn't thought of that.
Radishes.
There are quite a few things I don't eat. All righty. Do we have time for beets? Very
Yeah.
quick. 5 minutes. 5 minute beets. I'm going to jump then to the greens. My father grew up, he was born in Louisiana 123 years ago. And he loved his turnip greens. Can you imagine? Oh, you've had, well, my mother used to cook them for him once in a blue moon, but I don't think I ever ate them. So anyway, my daughter once again grows beets, which once again I don't really eat. And I always thought, you know, beets are red and round. Well, they're not all red and round. Once again, they're coming in different colors. But the tops, depending on your variety, they're dark green. They're either crinkly, curly, smooth. Sometimes they have a dark red vein up the middle. But she grew, I think it was bull's blood. I think that's an old variety. Deep burgundy, shiny, curly leaves, just gorgeous. Leaves were that high. And she eats the young ones in her salads, and you can cook the tops as you would spinach.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a double, you can eat everything.
Right.
Yeah, except maybe the few roots that are down in there already. For your beets, once again, it's like your radishes, just the side of your hoe, 1/2 inch trench. I sow them, once again, beets can go in an 8-inch wide band if you have good soil. And how much do I do? I actually planted the seeds 2 inches apart. And then once again, when they begin to get crowded, you pull every other one and you have a baby beet. The baby beet, babies anything. If you're accountable, go for the babies. They taste better than the old folks. So Regina, you and I'd be safe. So anyway, pull those up and eat them, however, and then let the rest in the row over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending. Some beets hold well, especially if you grow them in the fall. Next time, weeds. I'm gonna give Melanie a long list in the next couple of days about weeds, so we have pictures of what to look for. And I guess we don't have time to talk about birds again. We're out of time? We're out of time. Enjoy the weather. It's gonna be cold and rainy next week.
Hopefully,
Uh,
well.
Well, we need the rain. Well, shower and snow shower.